Hi, it's John Jordan from PocketGamer.biz. This is our weekly roundup of the news. This is the week ending the 19th of September 2014. So it's been a pretty interesting week, all in all. It kind of started off with a bit of a bang, kind of rumoured what was happening kind of last week, but Microsoft did buy Minecraft. So I guess in terms of the actual purchase, it kind of makes sense in a sense that Minecraft now is generally seen as being much bigger than a game. Obviously, it is a game to a degree, but it's just so massive a phenomenon, really, particularly amongst a certain kind of age group of kind of teenage and sub-teenage boys that it's become like a powerful kind of platform, really, for lots of different things, education and obviously people learning and general creativity. So it makes sense in a way for a big kind of company like Microsoft to come in, and they can probably take it to new areas that the small developer who came up with it kind of couldn't really handle. I guess the interesting thing is the price. The price is something that kind of the money men are always interested in. $2.5 billion, clearly a lot of money. I think it's probably hard for us mere mortal people to judge whether the value of these kind of deals goes well. I mean, it's like buying a Premier League footballer. You kind of like, he may be really good before you buy him, then he might break his leg and be finished, or he might just not work in your team. So, we can't really tell whether that kind of financial outlay that Microsoft has made will be good or bad. I mean, clearly Microsoft has something crazy like I think I worked out $70 billion of cash and short-term investments in the bank. So they're not really down to their last kind of pennies. They can easily make that investment, and if it doesn't work out, not a disaster for them. But some people do know about money. So there was some analysts at DigiCapital who kind of are involved in this kind of stuff. They compared the Minecraft deal, the price of the Minecraft deal, to some similar kind of valuations. So they looked at Supercell, which was bought about a year ago, and also looked at King, who did an IPO this year, and also looked at Gung Ho, who do Puzzle and Dragons, again a publicly floated stock in Japan. So none of those were exact comparative deals where someone like Microsoft was completely buying the other party. They were more looking at valuations based on the profit and the sales of those companies. From that point of view, Minecraft was the most expensive deal, and by quite a long way. So it was at least double as expensive as the next expensive deal. Which again is not to say it's a bad deal. Clearly, when you have a situation where a company like Microsoft and maybe other people were involved interested, I'm sure, in buying Minecraft, so you have a bidding system that kind of, as we all know from eBay, that drives up the price you end up paying. I guess what was a bit more interesting in the long term was that Minecraft is very associated with its creator, Notch, who is a very kind of idiosyncratic kind of individual, and kind of like likes his privacy, and also likes to kind of chop it up on Twitter as well, which is kind of difficult when you're running a platform that millions of people are using and looking to see what you're writing on Twitter. So it was quite, maybe the most interesting thing for me was his personal statement saying with the acquisition, he's leaving the company he set up, Mojang, and obviously he's now he was a wealthy man before, he's even wealthier now, but he kind of pointed out he's not really been involved with Minecraft for a kind of a couple of years now. It's not something, he's a kind of quirky little inventor, kind of programming type guy. He doesn't want to be involved in running a business for millions of people. He wants to just do his own thing, and now obviously he can do that. So he's left, and he basically said he doesn't want to be a symbol for other people. It's not about the money; it's about his sanity. So he can go off and do his own things now. And he even said, hilariously, really, if he did another thing that he was getting like big traction, like Minecraft did in the early days, he'd probably like abandon it because he just doesn't want the hassle of dealing with all that kind of stuff. Which kind of ties into another kind of story. I mean, it's been rumbling on for a while. It's not a particularly mobile-focused story, but there's a Gamergate kind of situation where it seemed to be in some sort of kind of all-out war, really, between a certain part of the games journalist community and a certain part of the gaming community. I don't want to go into too much detail. To be honest, I don't really follow it in the incredible detail that some people seem to be kind of following and creating and causing these conflicts and stuff. But a couple of our writers on PocketGamer.biz did kind of have a crack at contextualising what was going on. I think it's interesting that in both cases they were being quite open in the suggestion that kind of gaming is a culture and a community, and while there's different factions within that, the whole thing is presumably if you're if you're a gamer, whether you self relate to that term or whether you just play games. I mean, obviously it's become a bit of a argument in its own right now. But effectively, you like games. That's probably why you're having these massive arguments about whether game journalists are all corrupt or whether these evil hardcore gamers are an endangered species and they're spoiling it for everyone else. But effectively, we all play games, so presumably we all like games. So presumably there should be some sort of shared community. That we shouldn't just go around attacking each other. Whether I don't really see the signs of any reconciliation yet between certainly the hardcore on both sides, but I guess you can only hope that for a bit more kind of charity on both sides, that effectively we all do like games. I think. I guess the other kind of news that is not a surprise that it happened. It's more like the launch. So we have Apple has obviously today released its new hardware. So iPhone 6, iPhone 6 Plus. Clearly, whenever an iPhone comes out, that's massive. That's people queuing, particularly this time around where Apple have finally kind of given in to the fact that people like bigger phones. So both of those are bigger phones. Kind of comes with a bit of fragmentation, I guess, for developers. Still, obviously, not on anything like the degree of Android. But kind of, I think, an interesting shift, really, that Apple, and I guess as it did with the iPad, it has its strong views on how things should be in general. But at some point, it has to agree that actually some people like bigger phones and smaller iPads. I guess the more interesting news from a business point of view, mobile games business point of view, is the release of iOS 8. So the operating system, not quite as big an update as iOS 7 in terms of all the graphical changes that were in that, but kind of significant nevertheless. Stuff like HealthKit, which is something that will presumably come to the fore with the release of the Apple Watch next year. But I guess for game developers, the most important thing is iOS 8 contains this Metal API, which is a new way of writing graphics. So it kind of replaces OpenGL ES, which again is another fragmentation kind of issue, because so a whole bunch of developers now are announcing that they're supporting very high-end graphical effects using Metal. Unfortunately, this only works for a certain level of hardware. So it's only hardware that uses the A7 or the A8 chip. So that's basically an iPhone 5S and above, and an iPad Air or iPad Mini Retina. So actually, quite a small percentage of devices at the moment can actually use any of these kind of all singing, all dancing new graphical kind of improvements, which again is something we've never really had to deal with on Apple devices. I guess another kind of more prosaic issue is how people are updating to iOS 8. So I haven't updated to it yet because on my iPad, even though the download is only 1 gigabyte, it needs 5.7 gigabytes of free memory to install. Obviously, it doesn't need all that once it's installed, but effectively, people are having to delete half their apps and remove their photos and put them up to the iCloud or whatever, just to get the space to then install the operating system update. Which, if you're not that bothered about HealthKit, which isn't really being used at the moment anyway, or Metal, it's probably not something people are doing straight away. And actually, quite a few companies have been tracking the adoption rates of iOS 8 compared to the previous iOS updates, and actually the adoption rate is much slower, I guess, as we'd expect, than iOS 7, which is the fastest adoption rate, but even slower than iOS 6. And it's actually kind of similar what we're seeing to iOS 5, which so I think we're about, what are we now, about 36 hours into since it's been released, and it's just over 10%. I guess we'll have to see in the long term quite what the adoption rate is, but clearly with most Apple hardware, the adoption rate over time has been pretty much gone up to 90%, which is kind of why Apple has kept this nice clean ecosystem for its developers. We'll see if that kind of maybe changes. It looks like over time that probably has to change because there's obviously more devices out there that it's supporting. So those are kind of the big stories of the week. I mean, obviously on PocketGamer.biz we don't just cover news, we cover lots of other things. So we've had a good making of this week. So World of Tanks Blitz, the kind of the mobile kind of version of the World of Tanks game, very successful. So we've been talking to the developer about that. And also we've had some kind of interesting, we always like to talk to people in the industry, so we've been talking to some of the guys in Korea. Obviously Kakao is the well-known messaging platform in Kakao, but there are other kind of options available for messaging over there, so we've been talking to some experts about that. And our other experts, we have some Mavens groups that we run, so our Mavens groups are experts in the industry that we ask for comment, and this week they've all been talking about the kind of potential of the Apple Watch. So Apple Watch is still a very kind of like a we all know it's coming out, but there's lots of things we don't know about it. So there's been lots of speculation about the price of the gold one. Will the gold Apple Watch cost $5,000? And lots of other kind of things we don't really know about how that's going to work as a device. But game developers always like new devices to mess around with. I was quite surprised actually. We have a couple of Mavens groups. So we have our main Mavens groups. Those guys are a bit more kind of senior in the industry. They weren't so excited about the Apple Watch really. I guess they're a bit more kind of suck it and see what we need to know more information. Whereas we have a new indie Mavens group who are more kind of like small scale developers, and they were much more enthusiastic about what they could do with it, even though they were actually not so enthusiastic about wearing it. It seems that until people can actually see it and hold it in their hands and see whether they actually want to wear one of these watches, people seem a little bit sceptical. Maybe people just don't wear watches anymore. I think that's the big concern, or the big issue that will be interesting. If people don't wear watches, even if the Apple Watch is the best watch in the world ever, maybe if you don't wear a watch, that's more important than wearing the best watch ever. So anyway, so a lot of news this week. I'm sure there'll be lots of news next week. Hope to see you then.